All right, I'm here with Jason Bell, former top producing agent, and you moved into the management pretty quickly after you started your real estate career. You sold me my first house.
I did.
You did? First house I ever bought, you sold that to me. And then you quickly got into the management. So walk me through kind of how you went from a junior agent to managing a Ebby Halliday office rather quickly.
Yeah, I think. It was a pretty quick journey. You're right. Even before being an agent, I had been in the insurance business for 16, 17 years, running kind of a family practice. We did employee benefit type stuff, not property and casualty stuff, but life and health, and did that for 16 years. Provided a nice income, provided a nice lifestyle for my family, gave me flexibility to raise my kids the way I wanted to raise, and coach and go to games and things like that. And I don't know, sometime 2016-ish, woke up literally one morning and just said, I'm done. Like
It's time for a new chapter.
yeah, like if I do this, I could do this easily for another 20 or 30 or 40 years. But if I do that, I felt like I was wasting my talents, my prime, whatever you want to call it. So I just literally walked away. Had no plan, had no idea what I was going to do, which I would now with kids at an age that I worry about them in their careers. I would never advise anybody else to do, but I just said, that's it. So I got my license in 2016, really as a stopgap. I thought, that time was hip and trendy to flip homes, right?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, it was.
I'm gonna go flip homes, and I'm a relatively handy guy. I can do a lot of my own work and those kind of things. So I thought, all right, I'll get my license as a way to learn the business, to flip homes, to learn what sellers like and buyers like. And so I told myself kind of this internal thing of I was going to give myself 2 years on what I called the retail side of the business at the time, which was just going out and being a realtor.
Right.
And so I got my license, really dove headfirst in January 1st of 17 into the market. Went to Ebby Halliday. I just grown up around that brand, being a Dallas native. Went to Ebby.
You sold me my house in 18, so you're a fresh agent
Yeah,
still.
so I was still pretty new at that time. And honestly, it's cliche, but I just fell in love with the business. I It just fit my personality. My wife, which I'll never forget. After the first few months, she's like, "I think you found the perfect job because 95% of your role is just the ability to bullshit with people."
Yeah.
I don't know if we can say that on here, but
Oh, yeah.
but it takes the gift of gab, and I was blessed with that or cursed with it, however you want to see it. But I just enjoyed it, and in that first, even really getting up to launching as a realtor, different people from all walks of life, friends, family, parents, family, people I've known my whole life, kind of started coming out of the woodwork of like, oh my gosh, we've always thought you would make a great realtor. And at some point you got to just listen. And so I just took off and ran with it and sold houses in 17, 18, 19. I appreciate your thought that I was a massive, great, huge producer. I was well above average, but I was not a rock star, superstar by any means. Anyway, by my calculations now as a manager,
Right.
I was good, but was enjoying what I was doing. And then in what would that have been? That would have been kind of mid to late 2019. Ebby kind of had this agenda from a leadership perspective that was called Grow the Bench. And it was kind of a management.
Grow from within.
Yeah, like starting to identify who's our next round of leaders. Let's kind of build out a leadership development program, and let's get the next folks ready instead of always being reactionary of a manager leaves and now here's some rookie that's never done this before. Let's try to proactively build from within. And I was approached at that time to see if I had any interest. I was flattered, clearly at that point being 2.5 years in the business, I kind of was like, how am I going to teach a 20-year agent anything?
Right.
But I I said, sure. And we had some conversations then, and just I think my name was on a list at some point in time. Nothing really happened. Nothing really came of it. Fast forward to March of 2020. And early in that month, my manager at the time, who had become a good friend of mine, resigned and left, went to a competitor. And we were left in our office without leadership, kind of in a state of flux, limbo, however you want to call it. And then 5 days later, COVID happened.
Right. Yeah.
And the whole world, the whole industry clearly went into turmoil. Everybody was sheltered in place. No one knew which way was up. Real estate, were we essential? Were we not? Could we work? Could we leave the house? Could we not? It just was a really crazy time. And through that, I just kind of started proactively within our office setting up, sales meetings and setting up virtual happy hours. Remember when that was a thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hey, let's all get on Zoom
Did
and
a virtual
at
vendor
4 o'clock
fair.
today and drink beer together from our patios. It seems so foreign now, but doing those kinds of things, and it just kind of, I don't know, brought me out of my shell a little bit, put me back on the map. So through that first couple of months of COVID, conversations started back up with leadership. At the time, in my mind anyway, and this is how, God can kind of put you on different paths. In my mind, I was going after the Plano role in the office I was in, of taking over that leadership role. It didn't pan out that way. Some things happened, some mergers happened, whatever. And it was like, hey, we do want you to lead an office, but it's in Flower Mound. What do you think of that? And I'll never forget the conversation with Carolyn Rawson. It was the regional at the time, now the CEO of Ebby. She said, would you consider other offices? And I jokingly said, it depends, as long as it's not in Fort Worth. And she kind of laughed and said, what about Flower Mound? And I'm like, okay, it's not quite all the way there.
Yeah. It's not
so-
terribly far from here.
No, it's fine. So it was just an interesting time. I ended up, I probably knew, and the existing manager there had just indicated a desire to step back and just go back into sales. So she was on board from day one, and was a big supporter. And we kind of knew, I don't know the exact timing, we probably knew in mid-April that I was going to take over that office. And as looking back, again, it sounds odd. The entire plan was, let's not announce this while we're all in quarantine. Let's wait until COVID is over. And that's when we'll make this announcement. And it went on and it went on and it went on. So I think finally, it might have been, I'm just making this up, I could be totally wrong. I think it was around the end of May, beginning of June, that finally said, hey, there's never going to be a great time to do this, but I've been kind of managing from the shadows. I know what's going on. I've had my pulse and my fingers and things, and it's not fair to Becky to continue to put on the brave face that she's the leader. Let's just go ahead and do this.
Yeah.
We had an introductory outdoor event, and I got introduced to, at the time, 65 agents who had no idea who I was. Never had seen me, never had met me, and all of a sudden it was like, hey, my name's Jason, and I'm your new leader. But it was great. Quickly, kind of was adopted into that office, was welcomed with open arms. 4 or 5 months later, the same thing happened with our Irving Las Colinas office. There was a manager there that also kind of just based on where they're at in life and career wanted to go back into just purely sales. So I took over that second office in that same year, and then have managed that block of agents ever since. And that's, kind of what's got me here, where we are today.
I've been to probably 6 different Ebby Halliday offices. I've seen turnover. I've seen agents and managers move in and out pretty quickly. But I get feedback from a lot of Ebby agents that have moved from office to office to office, and your name pops up quite regularly as a manager that is like a team member rather than just the guy sitting up in the corner office commanding everyone what to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a part of your success, at least from what I've seen, is what other people have seen in you. So talk to me about that team relationship versus the being
Yeah, I
just the
think it's
boss.
just a.
Because that's I've heard that in multiple
I
offices.
think it's a humility, it's an approachability, it's an availability thing. I still, at my core, feel like I don't know what I'm doing, to be quite honest.
I don't think any adult knows what they're doing.
I've now had my real estate license for what, 8 years, almost 7.5. So there's still many scenarios that I've never seen, right? That I've never come across. But all an agent really wants to hear is they just want to be heard, right? They want, when they need something, they want someone to be there. You don't have to have the answer. I've learned over time, I hope now, I have most of the answers, but they just want to be heard. And I still feel like that. I think one thing that's different is because I was an agent, I still very, very, very much think like an agent. I don't think like a manager. I don't think like an executive. I don't think, my first thought is not the corporate implications of this or what's best for corporate.
You're so relationship driven, though.
Yeah, I mean,
I've noticed that.
and I noticed too, I mean, I remember being in his agent. If there's a joke in real estate, that I've told agents for years. When I was still an agent, people would ask me, I'm like, I think as a realtor, 95% of your job is literally being a therapist. Like 10% of it is real estate, 90% of it is managing the emotions of either your client, the other agent on the other side, their client. You have to be able to navigate emotions, highs and lows. You've got to keep people focused on, hey, this is the big picture. This is what we're doing. So I remember when a client would call me, frantic about something, right? And it may be major. It might be, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this house, the foundation is in terrible shape. Why didn't we know this? And kind of get spun up over it. It could also be, how dare them, say they don't like the color of the paint in the living room. It can be a lot of things, but it's in that moment, that is an extremely emotional thing for that client, and they're dumping it on the agent, and the agent takes it. Well, what I figured out in management is then that agent oftentimes will turn and call the leader, me in this case, and can kind of dump the same information. And it does no good for me.
You don't need to hear that.
To treat it. No, I mean, it's actually the best part of my job. I enjoy hearing it, but it's my job to bring them back down, right? So it's like now I'm just a therapist to the therapist.
Right.
The job really in leadership's gotten no different. My patients look different now. Now they're agents and not clients. But that's, quite honestly, that's what they need and they want is for you to answer, you to listen, you to talk them off a ledge, you to look at things from a outside perspective without any emotion and say, hey, have you thought about this? Or have you thought about this? Or maybe here's an approach you could take in that situation, and get them calmed down and back to, okay, here's the best path forward. And that's where, I think I've provided the most value to my agents is that, right? Not, hey, do you know what are the current loan limits for FHA? Like, I don't know.
Call the guy.
Yeah, call the lender.
Yeah.
What can we do this? What is going to come up on the typical VA inspection? Like, I don't know. We can find out. But, I think where I've made a difference and what I'm most comfortable in is just in that relationship of an agent going through an extremely good time in their career or in their life, and they want to share it with somebody. I'm like, fine, share it with me.
Right.
Like, let me be that person. Yeah. And let me be the cheerleader, and let me send videos and texts and, hey, I saw you had a closing today. Awesome job. Where'd that business come from? Keep it up. Like, people just want to, humans, I think, just want to be heard. and seen and appreciated.
They do. Yeah.
And I feel like in our business, and I can see the whys in some sense now that I am corporate. But in our business, sometimes in other brokerages and it's the management seems unattainable, or to your point, it seems like they're on a different level, or they're in an office. Like every once in a while, I'll hear somebody in my office say, like, I'm really sorry to bring this to you. Like we've been talking about this for a while. We didn't want to bother you with this, and that actually bothers me.
Right. Bring it to
Where
me.
I'm like, bring it to me. Like that's my job. That is my job. I laugh. An agent that I've become good friends with now, but early on in her career, would call, and every call she would make, I was happy to answer, but every call would start with, "Sorry to bother you." So I just wrote in the phone, "Sorry to bother you," was calling, for the longest of times. And so I love that part of the job, though. It is the most satisfying for me, is if I can provide that person levity or guidance or direction in that moment. That is by far the best use of my time. I'm super, super proud of my retention. To your point, knock on wood, I don't lose agents. I've lost very, very, very few. In every one of them, I can identify a very specific solution, and most of them had nothing to do with me or the company.
That's
And I'm
awesome.
extremely proud of that.
Yeah, you should be.
We recently went through a merger where my two offices merged together, and I took 65 and 35 agents, and we closed one office and merged them all into the other. And through that process, lost nobody. And I think that's a testament to our company, our culture, our office culture. To move an office 20 miles away.
Right.
We did open a little satellite pocket office for those particular agents to work out of. But, I take good pride in that.
You should. I mean, that's an accomplishment. I go to offices where, month to month, I don't see the same agents, so that's pretty
Yeah.
good. And the offices that I do go into, Ebby Halliday is known as a professional brand. In my opinion, I see it as a professional brand. I go into some offices where, because I'm, vendor, I go in, I buy the breakfast, I get to talk to your agents for 5 minutes, tell them what I do. Some offices you go into, they don't vet you, they don't care who you are. As long as you're bringing the tacos and you're paying your monthly fee, it doesn't matter, right? But your office being a more professional office, you can't just bring in anybody. You and I have history. I've done a bunch of construction work for you before I did the inspections. You knew my character, and I know you felt decent bringing me in and saying, "I trust Lewis." But
Right.
you bring in other vendors, you bring in other people to the office. How do you keep that professionalism and maybe vet a vendor or anyone that's going to be working with you guys, including agents? Because the culture has to match, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and yes, I am very,
You're
very, very
particular about
selective
yeah.
of who, and that I can't speak for all of Ebby. That's the same in every single office. I know just in my office, I'm very selective on who. I hate the word allow, but on who I allow or give access into sales meetings. And I could care less if somebody brings food or not. It's nice, but and that really to me goes back to a promise that I made my agents early on when I got there. We had kind of made some shifts. I think at the time we were doing weekly sales meetings. We switched that to bi-monthly, or more or less every other week, minus vacation days and spring breaks and
Right,
stuff.
yep.
But and through that process, I just said, look, all I'm asking for is an hour and a half twice a month to come in. I expect you to be there. I will bring value. I will bring a good meeting. You will walk away feeling better about yourself and more informed and more educated. Or if I feel like I just don't have it that day, or there's no new content that I feel like is relevant of your time, then I'm going to cancel the meeting. Like, I'm not having
A meeting for the sake of a meeting.
to
Yeah.
spit out 25, 35, 45 slides of just something you could have read. I made that commitment to my people, and I feel like I've stuck to it. that if you're coming to my meeting, it's going to be a good meeting, and it is a time well spent of that hour and a half, right? Because there's too many meetings I've been in the years in different businesses and different industries. It's like,
It's a meeting just to meet. Yeah.
like what did we get out of that? Like you could have sent me an email that said, the top producers of the month or this, that, or the other. Like we got that same email on Friday from corporate. Like you just read it to us essentially. And that's just my promise to my people of like, if it's not going to be a good meeting, then I will cancel it, period.
Well, I know
So that goes back to the vendors of like, hey, if I don't think you have charisma or that you have a good topic or that you can carry the room and you can speak and my people will respond to you, then I'm probably not letting you in the door. But it goes back to I don't want them to sit there twiddling their thumbs like, hey, thanks for breakfast, but this is a pointless conversation.
Right.
Why did we give this guy 5 to 10 minutes of our meeting? I'm like, it needs to be of value. It needs to be real things that they can tangibly take with them. Otherwise, that's because again, if you think of it of another way, and some of my leadership has instilled this in me is, again, if that's my 90 minutes that I get every 2 weeks, then that's my 90 minutes to shine and to pour value into my agents. So giving up 10 minutes of that to a vendor takes away time for me.
Quality, yeah.
So it better be really good and really worth their time, right? I don't need, people hawking all sorts of different stuff and this gutter company and that roofer and this. We can get breakfast on our own. Or you know what? If you provide a great meeting, the agents don't even care if you have breakfast, right?
Right.
They're there for the meeting. So the vendor relationships we have go back to bring value, and also if you just cold call out of the blue and ask if you want to come sponsor a meeting, it's probably not going to happen. If you've personally worked with a handful of my agents and my agents come in and say, hey, this is my go-to inspector, this is my go-to roofer, I've used this guy, and other agents confer and agree, yeah, we all use the same guy for our photos, we all use this person for this, then I'm going to be more willing to take that phone call and meeting and be like, okay, what's your pitch, what are you trying to do, and go from there.
To speak on that, some offices that I've never been to or advertised in actually call me and say, hey, 4 or 5 agents said they liked the inspection.
Right.
Do you want to come sponsor a meeting?
Yeah, sure.
What a great, yes.
That's like a buyer or seller calling a realtor.
Yeah.
Being like, hey, I got your name from Lewis. Can you help me sell my house? You're like, of course I can.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I've also noticed in your office, and I think this goes back to the culture you bring, when you have a meeting, it's packed. Sometimes I go to meetings where, like you're saying, it's required every month or every week. They got to go in, and there's like 10 agents in the room. They're not engaged. But every single meeting I've been to of yours, everyone's there, everyone's paying attention. And you talked about the low attrition rate. Your agents don't leave much. So there's got to be something to, when you're hiring an agent to come work for Ebby and work in your office, there's a culture you're looking for, I'm sure, rather than just, what numbers can you give me? Can you produce? Come on board.
Yeah, I mean, I try my best to hire and recruit to culture. There's been plenty of opportunities to recruit. Hey, this agent is a $25-30 million agent. Like they're looking for a brokerage. You should talk to them, or I'll talk to them. And I'm just like, you would not fit. Our culture in my office is extremely collaborative. I would say there's zero ego across the board. I mean, my top producers are in the office on a regular basis, and they're sitting and rubbing elbows with my rookies, right? And they're all learning. The rookies learning from the top agent on how to grow their business. The top agent's learning how to do Instagram and Snapchat, right? I mean, it's they're all learning, and it is a bought-in culture that we have of a rising tide lifts all ships. Like
absolutely.
There can't be why did she get this and I didn't get this? Why did he do this and I do this? Or I discovered some secret, right? I've got some secret now, lead source or something else that I'm not going to tell anybody about. because I want it. I'm trying to beat you. No, we don't have any of that. I'm trying to beat you. It's, hey, I'm doing this and it's really working.
Collaborative effort.
And that's why, and that's how our meetings are structured. Like it's early in the morning and it's not always the easiest things to do. You've seen in a couple, but I try very hard and I will welcome awkward silence until somebody talks. I want audience participation. I want people talking and asking. So I try to structure my meetings in a way that not only welcomes that, but encourages that, because I think that's where agents fight best. When you're like, hey, what are we doing an open house this week? Did you get any leads? Did you get any leads? What's going on? You have a new listing. Okay. Where did it come from? Well, it came from a referral. Great. Everybody hear that? Right? She had called and done these things that we taught you to do and got a lead from it. So we're all about open lines of communication, welcoming environment. And yes, if I feel pretty confident that if I can get a recruit, if you will, whether that's an experienced agent or a new licensee into the business, to a sales meeting, that they will join the company. They will join the office.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I consistently welcome, like, hey, if you want to get a sneak peek to what it really is, because culture is one of those things, and it is a hard thing to recruit to. There's a brokerage for everybody, but some are going to tout split and cap and transaction fees, and we have no this and we have no that, and come over here and you just pay us $500 a transaction. And there's a model for everybody. I don't necessarily believe in all of them. I understand that the brick and mortar brokerages out there aren't the cheapest places in town to operate, but I think the value you get out of it is so substantially more than dollars and cents, that when people come in, I'm like, hey, come check it out. Like I can't, there's no D magazine ranked #1 for culture, right? There's no U.S. News and World Report #1 for culture. It's not a tangible thing. Like we can say, oh, we're #1 in volume, oh, we're #1 in units. Like we can do those things too, but
it only means so much.
But for the agent that really is looking for culture, you have to feel it to believe it, and there's just no other way to do it. I've been fortunate enough to bring in numerous agents from other brokerages that have all admitted after the fact, like, hey, I heard you talk about culture and it sounds so great, but it's really hard to believe. Like you almost got to go into it with a leap of faith. And then they'll come to me later and they're like, I didn't know this could even exist in this business. Mm-hmm. Like the level of camaraderie and culture and support. So, I'm proud of it.
Support a lot. I know there's a lot of coaching that goes into it that you do. And every market, it doesn't matter what time of year, it doesn't matter what year it is, every agent goes, well, in this market, it's really complicated right now.
Right.
Every agent I've ever talked to, well, it's because of the market. Like, just always got some thing about the market. But the market is changing right now. Obviously, there's some things. What do you tell agents when they get worried, when they start freaking out about either a declining market, something has changed with the way they have to do business, new rules, new regulations? I mean, there's always something changing. So how do you keep your agents? I know you talked about being a therapist.
Yeah.
And some get really wound up about these things and think it's the end of the world. And it's been the end of real estate 100 times over. Every year there's some new thing.
Right.
What do you do for them? How do you keep them just?
Well, I think it's navigating change is hard. I mean, there's so many cliches you can put, saying whatever you want to, however you want to spin it. The only constant in life is change.
Yeah. It's always
changing.
Irony.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what you're talking about. There's no news that's come out recently that's kind of rattled the industry. But you're right. I mean, going back, heck, even before I got into business, MLS was a book, right? And then it was like, well, that went online. Like, oh my gosh, this is going to eliminate realtors because now it's
so
digital.
Accessible, yeah.
It's like, nope, didn't change. Oh my gosh, here comes Zillow, right? Now everybody can just search on Zillow. They'll never need an agent again. Nope, that really didn't change much. It just was an internet platform. Um, oh my gosh, here's iBuyers. Here's the whole iBuyer craze that has, for the most part, come and gone. Um, but oh my gosh, how will I ever sell a house? Every seller's going to just sell to an iBuyer. Um, all these. There's always something, right? There's always some new twist, tweak, fear, and yet we persevere and we just keep going.
You
So
adapt.
I try to keep everybody focused on that. Um, the changes going on in our industry right now, uh, I think they'll be a topic of newsworthiness for the next short while. What a short while is, I don't know, 6 to 12 months. But overall, I think it's much blown out of proportion. And I try to keep my people focused on the relationships, right? The relationships. If you're treating people, right, none of this stuff matters. Like the transaction itself, the semantics of buyers and sellers and this and that and the other may look a little different. Like we may have an extra form or two you got to fill out. There may be an extra phone call or two you got to make. But people are still going to buy and sell houses, right? They're still going to move. They're still going to get married and get divorced and have kids and move jobs.
And
And,
they still want realtor representation.
like,
Yeah.
yes, there'll be some small percentage of the population that thinks they can do it themselves, right? They either will or they won't. And those people
There's always
really,
been.
they've always been there.
They've always been there.
They've always been there. So, um, again, I think it's, I don't mean to dismiss it, all the changes that goes on, but it's just the latest thing.
Right.
Now it makes interest rates not seem so big of a deal. But, I'm like, hey, we're going into a spring market. Interest rates are still higher than we'd like them to be, but they're relatively predictable right now. They're relatively flat. And the longer they stay flat, the more buyers start to go, okay, this is the new norm. The more sellers say this is the new norm and come into the market. So I think we're still poised to have a fine 2024. I don't think the sky is falling. I don't, yes, there's going to be just some
There's always
some
hiccups
change,
every year.
you
There's
know,
always
but
something.
it's,
Yeah.
it's no different in inspections, right? Where it's, hey, here's some new regulation that we have to do this or we no longer can do that. Like, well, it doesn't mean no one's going to inspect their house,
Right.
right? There's always change. So it's keeping people focused on the big picture.
We adapt a lot in our business. When the
Yeah.
market changes, we have to adapt. We've added in with less total inspections than maybe 2 years ago. We've changed the model to, okay, well, we're going to offer you a lot of services.
Yeah.
So we're not just doing residential home inspections. We're doing water testing, we're doing mold testing. We can do lead. We can do asbestos. So we just created this. Hey, if I'm going to do less inspections, my ticket price better be higher.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, you've taken a model that we've taken with vendors internally of a one-stop shop.
Right.
Right? Like, the last thing an agent wants to hear or a buyer is, well, I can inspect it, but no, I can't do the termite, and I can't do the pool, and I can't do the foundation, and I can't do this. So now
You just want one phone number.
You've turned around and said, okay, now I got to call a foundation guy, and I got to call this. Everybody would rather call one person and be like, can you do all of this? Are you prepared and certified and licensed, whatever, to do all these different things? Yes, great, right? So there's a huge amount of value in, I only want to call one person. I don't want to call 5 people, number one. But number two, I think your business is no different. It's all based on relationships,
It
right? Is someone going to call Lewis and Element because they do a better inspection?
Not normal.
I don't think so. I don't think they're like, y'all do it better than this. Y'all find more things than this company does, or you don't find things. I don't know. But they're going to do it because they enjoyed the experience. You answered your phone. When someone called, you responded. You showed up when you said you'd be there. We talked about this early on when you were getting into the business. I'm like, whatever you do, don't scare the hell out of a buyer in front of an agent. It's not your job to scare them and make the decision of should they or shouldn't they buy this house. It's just your job to do the inspection and provide the data. And then once you again, I introduced you to our office. And yes, in that early part, if I vouch for you a handful of times of like, I know this guy personally, he's done work with me, for me, and I've used him, people start using you, and that starts, and then that starts, and then it spreads like wildfire through
With
an
a few
office.
words from you, it spread. So I got
Yeah. Well,
probably
then it goes to other offices.
20 agents in your office have used us at least, and then Dawn's office, Jennifer's office. Like I've started making the rounds through
Right.
Ebby because other Ebby agents start talking like,
Yeah, it's
we
no
used
different
Element
than
here.
us. I mean, people want to work with someone they've worked with before, or someone who has worked with that person before. Period. Right. I will always be like, hey, I need my gutters done. Well, I'm not going to pick up the phone book or get on Google and look for a gutter company. Right. I'm going to go, who do I know in the business? A roofer that I know, or maybe, a contractor. Maybe I'll call Lewis or somebody and go, hey, do you know somebody that does X? Like, yeah, this is the guy I would use. Then I'm done. I don't need to shop it. I take the word for it because of the relationships I've built with those people. And I think that's advice I've given to any vendor that's gotten into our business, right? You included. We talked years ago when you kind of were like, hey, I want to get into this inspection thing. And you picked my brain a little bit and we talked through it. And
We did, yeah.
it's building relationships, right? Yes. And I'm impressed how you'd adapted, because it is, I mean, the market we went through post-COVID, right, which was unexpected, unprecedented in history, literally was out of control, multiple, 20, 30, 40 offers on a property in one
Ridiculous.
weekend.
Yeah.
Well, in that, to be competitive, buyers were not asking for home warranties. So the home warranty business really struggled.
It was bad.
Some buyers were even waiving inspections.
A lot.
So,
Yeah, a
so
lot were waiving inspections.
inspection companies struggled. And you figured out how to navigate that. Like, okay, well, if we're doing fewer, then what, not just charge more, but what services can I also provide to continue to make a living and to grow a company? So I think the more you can build relationships with people, do a great job. I mean, it's so amazing, and you know this. Back in your contractor days, and agents look for this too with contractors. It's like, answer your phone, show up when you say you're going to be there, and don't make excuses.
Yep.
Like, I'll go start a contractor company tomorrow. I've never swung a hammer in my life, but I'll be successful because I'll answer my phone. I'll be there when I say I'm going to be there, and I won't make excuses. And that's really all. The only secret to building good vendor relationships is that.
Yeah, we've noticed that a lot, and when we do make mistakes, which of course we will, we own up to them. I think that so many vendors I meet blame it on a lot of other people. I see that all the time, and then everyone can read the BS. One of your agents hears an excuse, they go, "Okay, man, hang up the phone. Never use that guy again."
Yeah, exactly.
Versus, we screwed up. I'm gonna take care of you. We're gonna do this one. I'm not gonna charge you. I'll give you 50% off the next one if you use me again. I understand if you don't.
Yeah.
Everyone uses me again every time because I
Well,
own up to it.
And a lot of that is perspective too, right? So if I'm a vendor and an agent has a bad experience, right? One of two things is going to happen. Either the agent's just going to be ticked off, and you're never going to hear from them again, and they're never going to use you again, and you won't know why,
Right.
right? Or they complain to you, and you own it and admit to it, whatever. Quite honestly, I tell people all the time, like, I don't even care if you did it or not. Take the blame, right? Maybe it was their client that failed to do this, that, or the other. Maybe it was something else. Take the blame, right? That's what I try to do in my role. Like, take the bullet. It builds loyalty, right? One of the best advice I give we have internal partners with mortgage, title, and insurance. And one of the greatest things that I ever heard was, be ready and willing to fix problems that aren't yours without any expectation of anything in return.
Yes.
Period. Right? Period. If one of my agents is having a horrible time with an inspector, they have a question, they have something, and I say, I don't know, but call Lewis, right? Lewis didn't do the inspection. You got nothing to do with it. But if you just listen and go, yeah, we would do this or we would do that, or no, you're fine, that's fine, no panic, like whatever.
Regularly?
It didn't. You had no financial stake in it,
Nope.
but you helped fix their problem. That breeds loyalty.
Regularly.
All the time.
I'd say a few times a week I get a phone call. Hey, we had an inspection company come look at my listing. And they list out all the things like, is this normal? Should he be doing this? Why did he pull that cover off of that? Because they don't, well, you guys never do that. And so we walk through the different scenarios, and regularly I earn business from that. Because it's the same thing. Call Lewis, just ask him if that's normal.
Yeah. Fix problems that aren't, my top advice to any
And we get a lot of business from that.
Any vendor getting into this business, any ancillary business around real estate, fix problems that aren't yours without any expectation of any gain. Like, it just breeds loyalty.
You've been in the business a few years now. You've climbed, in my opinion, pretty rapidly through the management. And the trajectory is still there. What's your next goal? Are you climbing? You want to stay where you're at?
Man, I don't know. That's a good question.
I do see a lot of people look to you as a leader. So I think.
Yeah, I
there's a
think
spot,
I've become a little more comfortable in that role. It's been a growing process within our leadership team, within the industry as a whole. Like early on, it wasn't a strategy. It was just more being naive. I kind of got away with in management meetings being vocal because I was the new kid, right? And I could be like, excuse me, I understand what y'all all just said, but new guy here, explain to me how that makes sense. Like, maybe we should be looking at this a different way. And then by me saying that, maybe others would be like, yeah, we were kind of thinking the same thing, but we had just kind of been going with the flow. I did that early on for a while. And it wasn't on purpose. It was just literally being curious and like, I've always, my mentality for years has been like, don't tell me we do it this way just the way, because it's the way it's always been done. Like, that's the quickest way for me to now challenge you on everything. I'm always open. I'm always curious on why is it that way? Like, maybe that is the only way. And we've tried all these other ways before, but the way my brain works, I need to know these other things were tried and what they failed and why they worked or didn't work and how do we get to this. If this is still the best way to do it, then great. But I'm not a big like, well, just do it. Just do it because I told you to. That's never really worked for me. You can go back as a kid, my parents would agree with that. And it wasn't, I remember one time my dad said, I used to think you were just lazy. And I'm like, no, I'm not lazy. If I can do the work in half the time and get the same result, then why wouldn't I do that?
Right.
I was always thinking of other and different ways to do things. So that voice, I think, was heard. I got, quite honestly, I think about a year or two in, it maybe got overcooked. And so then I just shut off, to be honest. And I just thought, okay, I'll keep my thoughts in my own head, and I'll just do things my way. Do what I'm told to do, but I'll keep my thoughts to myself and just be a good soldier. And then in recent years, it was interesting. They're like, hey, why did you stop? Where'd your voice go? Like, why did you stop? We liked that. We need that. And so I've in more recent times gotten back into that. I still don't know where it comes from. Honestly, I try to shuck away from, do I have a voice within leadership? Yeah, enough people like you and others that say, hey, it's a little different. Okay, where does that take me? I don't know. I do feel like I have a strength and a gift. And again, I told somebody this the other day, coming out of my insurance world, I had become very jaded on someone that ever said, find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I thought that was the biggest crock. I said, there's no way that really exists. That doesn't happen. People are drinking the Kool-Aid. That doesn't exist. You find something that you can tolerate and then makes the money that provides for the lifestyle you want to live. Got into real estate, got into leadership, and now it is cliche that I really, really like what I do.
Yeah.
I love going to work every day. I love working with my agents. And so I'd like to do what I do for more people. What does that mean? I don't know. Is it continuing to grow the offices? Is it doing more offices? Is it advancing through leadership with Ebby? I don't know. I would hope those things are on the table in the future. Just human nature. I'm always looking for kind of what's next and what's growth. I'm not a
You're not a stagnant person.
No, I don't.
No.
I don't sit still very well. I've probably been moving around out here. I'm always. I've been told before I can never leave well enough alone. So I'm always like, well, that was great. And they're like, what you created was working great. Why'd you change it? I'm like, I don't know. Just I'm always trying to adapt and grow. So I don't know what the future means. What the future holds. I'm enjoying what I'm doing now, and as long as it involves agents and the agents appreciate what I do and what I bring to them, then I'm good.
I like that.
Yeah.
Before we close out, any quick advice you want to give some agents that every single one of these that we do, everyone's looking for a little bit of secret sauce. I always say there is no secret sauce. It's always just relationships drive transactions, not the other way around. That seems to be the most popular trend.
You're right, and
I think our entire conversation echoes that.
The secret sauce. I'll tell you this, and I've been going. I do one-on-one coaching with agents. Started it a year ago, and have had great success with that. I do about 10 agents a quarter, and just and we meet every couple of weeks, and through that, and really talking to one-on-one regularly, it became crystal clear to me that the secret sauce is face-to-face, voice-to-voice, is what we call it, right? Somebody the other day said nose to nose and toes to toes. I'm like, great, same thing, right? But any level of marketing is good, right? Agents say, well, should I send postcards? I'm like, sure, unless that's the only thing you're doing and you're only doing it every 6 months, right? If you're gonna do it, right? And send them really routinely. Should I do a billboard? Should I do the grocery carts at the Tom Thumb down the street? Should I advertise in this magazine? Should I sponsor this golf? It can all work, right? I'm big on keeping in touch with your clients, your sphere. Like, check in. Hey, Lewis, how you doing, man? Hey, I saw you posted that you're out in Broken Bow riding your mountain bike. Like, that looked really cool. Like, let me know. Like, pick up what the world. I talk about great breadcrumbs. Like, pick up the breadcrumbs the world is telling you, and react to them, and build relationships with those people. But what I've found is, by and large, there's a large reluctance, and I'm just as guilty as anybody. There's a large reluctance to pick up the phone. Like, I don't know.
It's tough.
This innate thing of I don't want to feel like I'm bothering someone seems to be very persistent. Yeah, seems to be very persistent in our industry. I think it's just because most great realtors kind of have a servant's heart. They usually have come out of teaching, healthcare. Some of the greatest ones I've done were flight attendants. Like, they've come out of a service background where they get value themselves out of giving to others. And so then when they call somebody, they feel like they're bothering them. And I'm not saying to pick up and cold call 25 people a day out of the phone book, but you can send postcards and texts and video texts and emails and newsletters and magazines, and I could send those to you 6 times in a month. What I've found is none of that is rarely going to drive you to pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, Jason, I got your postcard. You've been on my mind. I need to call and talk to you about selling. We've been thinking about moving, right? What more often happens is I've hit you with 2 or 3 or 4 touch points over the last 3 to 4 or 5 weeks. But then I followed up with a phone call, and I call you and I say, "Hey, Lewis, just checking in, man. It's been a while since we've caught up. I saw this or whatever. Saw your last podcast, man. It was really cool. Whatever." And then that conversation usually goes to, Lewis will say, "I'm so glad you called. I've been meaning to call you about blank."
Right.
Right? And so it's become abundantly clear. It is on every coaching checklist that I do with my agents now that we'll build on a marketing plan, that's fine, but it is absolutely going to include face-to-face, voice-to-voice touches regularly, whether that's phone calls. I'll let you get away with a video text, a face-to-face appointment, but it has to involve facial expressions, tone, seeing each other. Like I joke on social media, I'm like, it's called social for a reason.
Right.
We're people. We are a society. It's not a blog, right? Like it's not, here's what I think and y'all can read it and I don't care what you think about it. Like it's all about interaction. So I would say the secret sauce to successful realtors is face-to-face, voice-to-voice, always. There's not one realtor that I can think of that's uber successful that isn't always on their phone talking to people, period. That's been cemented in my mind is the secret sauce.
Well, I mean, it's true because the calls, the touch points, you left a pie on my door one time, but it's that care.
Yeah.
I think
Again, it's the human nature of being seen,
right.
right? Of just people want to be seen and
The
heard.
pie did the opposite. I called you, did you leave a pie on my doorstep?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, man.
The pies at Thanksgiving always works really well.
Yeah.
It's
But then
odd.
again, it bred a conversation
Yeah.
and we started talking about investment properties. Whether anything came from that or not,
Yeah.
it worked tremendously well. And you then
Yeah.
started a conversation. And then I just start continuously associating Jason real estate over and over.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
like,
and
okay,
I mean, it's all.
there's my go-to guy. There's the guy that I give.
I mean, it's. There's a lot of sales systems out there. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of, in our industry, I would say the big ones are Brian Buffini. I did Buffini as a young agent. Has a model.
Of course.
Tom Ferry has his whole coaching program. Ninja Selling is another one.
I love ninja selling.
And Ninja Selling is one that I just resonated with because of their Ford questions. It's so simple, and I'm a car guy like you are. Not that I love Fords, but at least I like any acronym that's a car. So for those that don't know, Ford is family, occupation,
This
recreation.
is where you actually talk to the audience.
Sorry. For those that don't know, family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Ford. So if you can navigate every conversation with Ford questions, it will be a good, memorable conversation for both parties. So again, an example of that, if I was not in a podcast with Lewis, but if Lewis and I had caught up, or if I had called, I could start with F, right? Be like, "Hey man, what's been going on? How are things? What's going on? I saw you out this weekend with the dog. How's the dog? Anything going on in your
Family-related
life?"
questions.
Yeah, and then naturally I'm gonna let him talk, and then I'm gonna get to occupation. Hey, how's the new gig going? Like I know you were at the office recently. You're doing great on the inspection stuff. I heard from a good friend of mine down the street that you're actually doing a remodel job for him right now.
Yep.
How's that going? Right? Now where am I going? I'm going to R. I'm going to recreation. Right? Cool. Hey, when was the last time you rode your bike? Like, man, I think you're crazy. You got like the whole suspension and going uphill, downhill. You're going to break something pretty soon. And then, if I know him well enough, I get to D, or dreams, which is, hey, you've been talking about taking that trip wherever. You've been always wanting to do this. You always wanted to own a property in XYZ. How are you coming on that goal? And at first it's difficult and it becomes labored, but over time it becomes completely natural. And if I have that conversation with you, naturally, you're going to turn around and ask me the same questions. right? And as a realtor, ultimately, I want to be asked, how's the market? Every single person. If you don't have a canned answer for that, you need to work on it. And it doesn't need to be nuts, crazy,
What's
volatile,
funny is I
whatever.
want to tell you about my bike right now. I mean, you
Yeah,
just
yeah. Um, but ultimately, you'll finally go, so hey, how's your job? How's real estate?
right.
Boom, door open, now we can talk. So having those conversations, it makes the other person feel heard, wanted, and especially if you can remember that stuff now, which is hard, really hard for me to do, because I am a on to the next thing kind of person. But if I can remember, oh yeah, Lewis was leaving late in March to go to this trip. If I can remember and then call and be like, dude, how was your trip?
Mid-April.
Right?
Yeah.
Then it's like, wow, that guy really cares. Like he's really paying attention to me. I never bring up real estate. I don't call and be like, hey, Lewis, just checking in. Oh, great to hear you're fine. You know anybody looking to buy or sell in the next 6 months?
Weird.
I don't know. I just, when those conversations happen, I'm like, so the first 10 minutes, did you really care? Or were you just trying to get to, do I have anybody to refer to you today?
It's
And
funny
that can work for other people. I'm not saying that doesn't work. If you're comfortable doing that, great. It's just not my style. It's not, I'd rather build real, genuine relationships.
well, you're so good at remembering the trips. You met me on an island one time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Our vacations.
I forgot. We were on vacation in the
Yeah,
Grand
they just
Cayman.
aligned.
And I'm like, hey, do I remember that you were going to be in Grand Cayman
You
too?
literally, yeah.
And you're like, yeah, we're on a cruise boat. We'll be there in the next 8 hours. I'm like, okay, well, come onto the beach.
Yeah.
Let's hang out for a little while.
There was no expedition. We just went and saw Jason.
Yeah, like, are you doing an excursion? No, I just figured, like, can you pick us up in the Jeep? And sure, whatever.
That was
So
great.
all was good.
Yeah.
All was good.
But you did remember that. And you're like, aren't you going to be like within 100 miles of me?
Yeah.
Even though I'm 5,000 miles from the house?
Intent.
Yeah.
And that's the other nugget I'll give that there is really something to, it's the thought that counts. There's really something to that, especially in the relationship business, which I feel like we are. There's a difference. I could, let's say, for an example, well, let's say this. I know a good friend of ours, a common friend now. I'm not going to mention names, but one day I saw someone posted on Facebook Marketplace a Ricky Williams, University of Texas, Heisman Trophy winner, game worn helmet signed, and I think it was a disgruntled divorcing situation. And I saw it pop up on Facebook Marketplace, total happenstance. And this lady said, the first person that can get here with $50 can have this helmet.
Oh my God.
And I don't despise UT, but I'm a Texas Tech kid. I don't root for Texas, but I knew that was a cool thing. And so I went immediately. I'm like, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I went and bought this helmet. I have no need for that helmet. It was just a whim for me. And the first thing I did was drive to a buddy's house who I know is a diehard UT fan. He works from home, and I knocked on the door, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Man, I just got a present for you," and gave him this Ricky Williams signed helmet, and he was blown away. And actually, at that time, it's been a number of years. I wouldn't say we were even super close yet. It was just thoughtful. I'm like, who would really appreciate this? And so I took it. Not because of that. We've become great friends since then. But to this day, that helmet sits on his desk, has been in thousands of conference calls, has caused hundreds of conversations that have led to referrals and business for me, right? And it wasn't a thought. It wasn't I gave everybody a $10 Starbucks gift card, right?
Yeah.
It was knowing, hey, Lewis is super into bikes. So I saw this thing about bikes, so I'm going to get this as the gift for Lewis. I know that, oh, such and such client of mine just posted on social media that their kid is going to Ole Miss in the fall. So maybe I hop online and I order an Ole Miss hat and I send it to them. And I say, hey, congratulations on Jackson going to Ole Miss. You're going to need this in the fall, right? An act of deliberate showing I've paid attention.
Intentionality.
This isn't
Yeah.
a generic card I sent to 10 people today. This is specific to you, right? Shows the thought, right? Again, it's like, that's an ugly, cheap hat. I'm never going to wear that hat. You know, I'm a flat bill hat snob. But I will still be like, that was awesome,
Yeah.
right? Like you listened, you noticed, you acknowledged in a way that was unique to me. That breeds customers, you know, by far.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I know who we're talking about, and I know that story because I've seen
You've
it
seen the helmet.
in his house. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's
Yeah.
amazing. That
Yeah.
is amazing.
And it's just, I didn't, in the moment, wasn't even on my mind, right? Had no intention, wasn't like,
But
ooh,
yeah,
I'm
the
going to do
relationships
this.
and the
I'm
opportunities.
trying to get his business. He still to this day, actually recently bought a house, a lake house, but had never been a client.
No, for
Probably
many
wasn't
years.
going to be a client. It was just a friend that I knew would appreciate that specific piece of memorabilia. Here you go.
No, it's great.
I encourage
advice.
agents always to do those kinds of things.
That
Like, don't
works.
ever
You're
think
right.
about, well, I don't know, it's going to be weird. Just
Just do it.
send it. Yeah.
Well, great advice. I've enjoyed chatting with you.
No, awesome.
If any
Always.
agents want to work for an amazing leader,
Yeah.
we'll have Jason's information in
Not
the description
recruiting.
below. Got to fit the culture.
Yeah, holler at me. I'm in Flower Mound, well, DFW Northwest. So basically anything north of the airport, I would call it, up to Denton area, Flower Mound, Argyle, Irving, Las Colinas, all around there. Hit me up. I'm
Cool.
always open for coffee and conversations, and I'm a big believer of if we're a good fit, we're a good fit. If we're not, we're not.
Nose
I
and
quit.
toes.
I quit worrying about pleasing everybody a long time ago. You know, I'm like, I'm either your cup of tea or I'm not, and I'm okay with that. So,
Oh, I am too. Yeah.
so yeah, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time. Guys, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.